Welcome back to JA Career Success. This is going to be your fourth visit, but what you're going to notice is now is when we're rearranging it. So we're going to take what was in the guidebook as session 4, which is on interviewing. We're going to push that to the very last visit that we have. And today, instead, in your fourth visit, we're going to combine activities 5 and 6 as they're written in the guidebook. What you're going to notice is that I have rewritten it into this pamphlet, so you can just set the guidebook aside and use this pamphlet today instead of the guidebook. What we're going to do is jump into talking a little bit about knowing your priorities and high growth jobs. So obviously someday when the students get out, we want them to make sure that they have a job that they love, but also a job that is available. So there are a bunch of talking prompts that you want to read through in your introduction, but for the sake of time, I'm just going to jump into the bulk of the activity. So session 5 is on knowing your priorities. So after you do the introduction, you are going to hand each student one of these personal priority cards, and they are going to, on their own, read through these and just ask themselves, would I rather work indoors or outdoors? And they're just going to take a pen or a pencil and they're going to star, circle, check mark, whatever their means is, and indicate which one that they would rather do. If they're in doubt, I just say throw it out. Just put an X on it, circle the middle, it just doesn't matter. So if they don't have a huge gut on it, it's not going to matter because in the end it's not going to be a high priority, okay? So you want to get the students going on that and have them kind of work fast-paced. Once you notice that the majority of them are getting done, you want to have them tear the cards apart. This can sometimes be the most frustrating part of junior achievement for me because they will rip them out one at a time. So what I always do is I always ask for one of the students that are done to show the rest of the class, and I fold it as an accordion, and then I unfold it and fold it the other direction, and the cards just start melting apart. So I already had this one partially done, but I always show them that, and then you can rip multiple at a time, and it just goes very quickly. So once they get them all torn apart, and as they're tearing them apart, you want to hand out a priorities graphic organizer. Now, some of them are in the shape of a triangle and others are just the 8.5 by 11. This is what they're moving toward. So you might have a triangle, you might not, but basically you're going to start on side 1. And so what the students are going to do is they're just going to take their pile, they're going to look at the one that they starred, and they're going to ask themselves, is that a high priority or a low priority? So they're just going to start sorting their priorities one from another. Okay, again, if they didn't know or they circled the middle, it would go on the low priority side. Once they get that done, you are going to set aside all the low priority cards and have them pick up the high priority cards, and they're going to flip the graphic organizer over to get to the top 10. So every student's going to have a different number of these. They might have 3, they might have 15, it just depends. It doesn't matter. But as they look through them, they're going to try to rank them 1 to 10. And I always tell them, try to get your top 3 for sure, and then from there it doesn't matter as much. So have them do that. And again, you're going to have to kind of keep prodding them along. So kind of look at the whole group, see how people are. You might have a couple stragglers, but keep the bulk of them going. Once the majority of them at least get their top priority, I always pause and have the students literally go around the room and quick do a shout out on what their top priority is. And if it makes sense, I might throw in some sort of affirmation or a connection to my own life or a clarifying question. Obviously, you don't have time to go into depth on everybody, but as you can, try to dialogue with the students and affirm those or explain why it might be important, or it might be interesting to know what their career aspiration is to see how it connects, etc. But that's the first part. That's going to be session 5 in a nutshell, and it should take about half the class period, which will be about 25 minutes. It's okay if you go a little bit over, but try to watch your time as much as possible. The whole point of this is to get the students to think about the importance of their priorities, because it's important for an employer to have employees that enjoy their jobs. It costs a lot of money to train and hire. So not only do we want a good employee, but you obviously want to enjoy your job every day as well. So that's the premise of the priorities, and to get them to think about how they're going to change potentially throughout their lives, but they really kind of become their anchor. And I always talk about that. There's some things that, you know, I used to love to do prior to marriage, like travel, etc. And now that I'm married, that's changed maybe a little bit. If I have kids, kids someday? How is that going to change things? And so showing them with your own personal life experiences how some of those might change throughout their lives. But really, the core anchors kind of keep them going throughout their lifetime. Okay? Then you're going to transition into the second part, which is knowing who's hiring. Obviously, you want to have a job that exists along the way. So I usually throw out something like, what's a company that, used to be here and is no longer. And a lot of times I use Blockbuster as an example. 5-10 years ago, there was a Blockbuster down the street from where I lived, and now there isn't one. Why? Because of Netflix and Amazon Prime and Redbox. And so getting the students to think about, you need to think forward in your future and what jobs are going to be available. You're going to lead this discussion by using the career guide that you hand out. The first page goes through skills, and I'm going to come back to that in just a minute. The centerfold is just talking about the career clusters. They should be fairly familiar with these because they use the program South Dakota My Life in 8th grade as well as in some high school programs, and they highlight on it. But they also heard about these in JA It's My Future in 7th grade as well as JAR Nation in 5th grade. So hopefully it's something that they're familiar with. And the back page is talking about job outlook, and basically what we just said is what are those jobs that are really going to be prevalent when they get out and into the future. Okay, so in your pamphlet there's talking points on how to talk through each of those categories. We do want you to talk a little bit more in the education section, as noted in here. There's bullet points just to really get the students to think about their options. They need to come up with an option that is best for them. And so you sometimes can get a similar degree, for example, in accounting or nursing degrees. They might not be exactly the same, but very, very similar. You can get a degree from maybe a tech school with a 2-year degree versus a university that's in-state, out-of-state, and a private school. You can get the same credentials or something very similar, and in the end get a very similar job, but your path and avenue of getting there and your cost of getting there could be very, very different. So again, consult the packet for some of those talking prompts to get the students thinking about that. One other thing to note, these show national statistics, and we have local statistics. We have the link is in the pamphlet. I'll also email it out, but it's the South Dakota Department of Labor and Regulation website. They have a really fantastic homepage that has a bunch of different career-related resources, and some of those are local graphs that show educational wage attainment, etc. So if you want to localize it to South Dakota, that's a great option as well. Okay, now depending on how much time you have left, you may or may not have much time to jump into this last portion, but the last activity that the students are going to do is to actually apply everything they've talked about so far to a specific industry. So you want to split the students up into small groups and give each one an industry, and what you're going to notice is there's 4 different industries, and then there's a spacer sheet. So if you have more than 4 groups, just grab another set and 2 groups will have the same industry. So once they get their industry, you're going to notice that on the bottom of the pamphlet sheet, it's going to tell you that you should encourage the students to provide a brief summary of what the job entails, look at what requirements, education, and training are needed. If they were interested in that industry, what subjects or classes in school should they focus on? So for example, if you want to go into the medical field, but you hate science, what are you going to do? So in high school, it's nice to know that if they don't do well in science, they could find a tutor, if it's just an attitude check that needs to change. But thinking about that now can greatly affect your future career and degree opportunities. Where could they go to volunteer, job shadow, or do an internship to help gain experience in this experience? Because again, or in this career, that's a great thing to look at. And then finally, what priorities would be important for someone in this career? Taking it back to the priority triangle that we worked at in the beginning of the session. Depending upon the time, you might have the opportunity to have 1 or 2 groups share what they came up with. Again, you might not have time, and that's totally okay. Getting them to think about and looking at an industry and thinking about those specific topics will be something that they could do on their own in regard to a career that they might want to consider in the future. So if they have some career aspirations, have them apply those same types of things to what they might like to do. Make sure that you wrap up with the summary and review. Again, collect information, have them tuck the 5 and 6 right in here. What you're going to notice is there were quotes that were provided for session 5. I always tuck it at the very, very end just because if there's not time, it's not really that important. But what you can do is hand out these quote stickers, and they can pick their favorite one and put it on their guide, and they could just write it down if they want to keep the sticker. As long as it does not end up on school property, they are free to take the stickers with them if they would like. So have a lot of fun, share your personal experiences along the way, and enjoy this session. Thanks so much.